The September 25th episode of Married at First Sight UK was absolutely brutal, and honestly, it might have been the most uncomfortable hour of television we've seen this season. If you thought the previous episodes were bad, this one took the cruelty to a whole new level. We had brides making their husbands sleep on sofas, height-shaming comments that left grooms in tears, and explosive honeymoon arguments that had everyone questioning whether any of these couples will make it past the first week. The biggest shock of the night came from Rebecca and Bailey, who had just gotten married and were supposed to be in their honeymoon phase. Instead, Rebecca decided to completely destroy Bailey's confidence within hours of saying "I do." During their wedding, Bailey told Rebecca he was 6 feet 4 inches tall, which should have been impressive by anyone's standards. But Rebecca immediately repeated his height back to him in complete disbelief, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then she went straight to the cameras and basically called him a liar, saying, "No, he's 6'1". This wasn't just about height preferences. This was Rebecca publicly humiliating her new husband by suggesting he was lying about something as basic as how tall he is. The poor guy had no idea what was coming, and you could see his face just drop when he realized she was questioning everything about him already. But Rebecca wasn't done there. When it came time to discuss sleeping arrangements on their wedding night, she made it crystal clear that Bailey would not be sharing a bed with her. She asked him to sleep on the sofa, and while Bailey respected her boundaries like a gentleman, the way she handled it was ice cold. This wasn't about taking things slow or being comfortable. This was about Rebecca making sure Bailey knew exactly where he stood in her priorities, which was nowhere. The whole situation with Rebecca perfectly captured what fans have been saying about this season's brides. One viewer summed it up perfectly, asking, "Have these girls ever watched this program before? What did they expect?" Rebecca had literally asked Bailey to "please just accept me" in her wedding vows, and then spent the rest of the episode making it clear that she had no intention of accepting him. Meanwhile, Ruth and Devani were having their own disaster in Morocco, and this one was even more heartbreaking to watch. These two had seemed like they might actually work during their wedding ceremony. They were laughing, the conversation was flowing, and Ruth had even told her friends that Devani was delivering everything she wanted in terms of personality and traits. She'd been excited about their kiss and seemed genuinely happy with her match. But all of that changed the moment they got to their honeymoon. Ruth decided to drop a bombshell that completely destroyed Devani's confidence and left him questioning everything about their relationship. She told him straight up that she had an expectation on height and that she'd dated taller guys before. The way she said it was so casual, like she was commenting on the weather, but you could see it crushed Devani. This wasn't just about physical preferences. This was about Ruth making Devani feel like he wasn't good enough for her based on something he couldn't control. She also told him that he hasn't got a great energy and that he was very negative, which must have been devastating to hear from someone who was supposed to be giving him a chance. The poor guy had opened up about his fears of being alone for the rest of his life, and instead of getting support, he got criticism. The situation got so bad that Ruth told Devani she didn't want to have a talk about traumas and then get into bed with you. She made it clear that his emotional openness was actually turning her off, which is probably the worst thing you can tell someone who's trying to be vulnerable with you. They ended up sleeping in separate rooms, and Devani was left feeling completely rejected and confused about what he'd done wrong. The drama wasn't limited to the new couples either. Mave and Joe, who had already shown signs of trouble during their wedding, completely exploded during their honeymoon. The tension had been building since Joe admitted he found Mave's comment about wanting to kiss him weird, and expressed concerns about her lively personality. Joe had basically made it clear that he wasn't sure he could handle Mave's free spirit, which should have been a red flag from the start. Things came to a head during what was supposed to be a fun, boozy honeymoon moment. Mave ended up screaming at Joe, telling him, "You're really pissing me off," before storming away from their conversation. The whole thing was captured on camera, and you could see Joe looking completely confused about what had just happened. Mave had apparently reached her breaking point with Joe's attitude, and she wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. The fight seemed to stem from Joe accusing Mave of having her guard up and not opening up to him, which clearly hit a nerve. Mave had been trying to connect with Joe, but his constant criticism of her personality and energy was wearing her down. When she burped in his face during a playful moment instead of laughing it off, Joe used it as another example of why they weren't compatible. Even Lee and Leah, who were already struggling, managed to make things worse during their continued honeymoon drama. Lee was still refusing to show any romantic interest in Leah and was claiming that Leah was accusing her of being awful. Lee made it clear that she didn't want to flirt with Leah and was basically treating their marriage like a friendship that she didn't even want to be in. The whole episode highlighted a pattern that fans have been noticing throughout this season. The brides seem to have completely unrealistic expectations and are being unnecessarily cruel to their husbands. Social media was flooded with comments about how superficial and brutal the women were being this year. One fan wrote, "Why are they all so superficial this year?" While another said, "OMG, the women this year are brutal." What made it even more frustrating for viewers was that these brides had signed up for a show where the whole point is to be matched with someone outside your usual type. They'd all claimed they wanted to break their patterns and find real love, but the moment they met their husbands, they immediately started picking them apart for not being what they usually go for. The height obsession was particularly ridiculous. Both Rebecca and Julia Ruth made comments about their husbands not being tall enough, despite both Bailey and Devani being perfectly normal heights. It showed how shallow their priorities were and how little they were willing to compromise or give their marriages a real chance. The episode also revealed how the experts might have deliberately created these mismatches for drama. Fans are starting to suspect that the show is more interested in creating explosive television than actually helping people find love. The pattern of incompatible couples and immediate rejections suggests that producers knew exactly what they were doing when they made these matches. By the end of the episode, it was clear that multiple couples were already in serious trouble. Rebecca and Bailey had no foundation to build on when she was making him sleep on the sofa and questioning his honesty. Julia Ruth and Devani were sleeping in separate rooms after she'd told him he wasn't good enough for her. Mave and Joe were screaming at each other instead of trying to connect. And Lee and Leah were stuck in the same pattern of rejection and frustration. The September 25th episode proved that this season of Married at First Sight UK might be heading for a record number of failed marriages. When couples can't even make it through their first week without major drama and sleeping in separate rooms, it doesn't bode well for their chances of lasting until the final commitment ceremony. The level of cruelty and superficiality on display was shocking, even by Married at First Sight standards, and left viewers wondering if any of these couples actually want to make their marriages work.